Hi, everybody. Good evening here from Finland, where it is 7 p.m. and different times for many of you. We are working in our Dissipation of Glamour webinar. And we've been working with the glamour of the part taken for the whole. This is the normal condition. And then, of course, the love of the part and desire for the part, rather than the love of the group, the love of the larger context, and eventually the love of the whole. This is a condition that we have to learn to outgrow, and it's only natural, given the condition of our senses and the condition of our mind, that we would be attracted to that which does not represent wholeness. We have to grow into wholeness, and we do that by, well, in so many different ways, but we learn to expand our ring pass knot, to break down the normal illusory ring pass knot and all of the desires associated with perpetuating the small ring pass knot, and we learn to become decentralized. Of course, centralization is a very important part of individualization. Without that, there would be no creation of the sense of center, which has to grow through the individual phase of development over millions of years. But then we begin to reach a point where decentralization becomes necessary and an inclusive group consciousness begins to enter. We see so many people at the egoistic stage, which can turn egotistical. You know, maybe nothing is wrong with developmental egoism, because that's simply a stage of development, but it becomes, rather malignant when it turns into egotism. And there is this emphasis of the part, as it must, according to the individual, dominate the whole, and everything revolves around the center. We're trying to overcome any tendency in our nature towards that. So we have a good group here tonight. I want to just welcome you, Angela, Anne, Annette, Barbara, Bianca, Bibi, Carl, Catherine, Clesia, Denise, Frederick, Gail, Gretchen, Helen, Jean-Pierre, Joanne, Yoke, Yopie, Karen, Margot, Marianne, Mariute, Martha, Michael, and Natnine. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Natnie, Nienke, and Regina, Roswitha, Susan, Suzanne, Tuija, Victoria, and Yvonne. And we are here on staff hoping to support the program, BL and Brett and myself. All right, there's some 33 of us. It's a good number. 33 is the symbolic number. I think it's associated also with the number of vertebrae in the spine, and it's associated with the life of Jesus from his 30th birthday at the second initiation, his 30th year anyway, on to the crucifixion and first resurrection at the 33rd year. And in Masonry, you know, when you take the 33rd degree, well, it has to be a conferred degree. You can take 32 degrees on your own merits, but the final degree of the 33rd has to be conferred. It's an important number, one of the sacred numbers, you know, along with 11, 22, 44, and so forth, those double numbers. All right, let's have a little alignment here. And scattered are we geographically in time and space, but that is not making a real difference to our togetherness in consciousness. We try to form, or we see ourselves as forming one field of sensitive consciousness, offering ourselves as an instrument to hierarchy to help clarify the miasmas of the astral plane. We have to clear the ethers. That's our first step, and drive the malevolent forces back onto the astral plane where they find their home, and eventually we'll have to clear that astral plane, starting now, but also in the hundreds of years ahead. So we are as one being. There is only one being, really, finally. But we, as a group here, drop any sense of separateness and separative individuality. There is also a non-separative type of individuality, but we drop our tendency towards egoism. And blessed by this advance in technology, which allows us to work together in the same space of consciousness, regardless of our position in time and space, we prepare ourselves to do some work on behalf of humanity and in cooperation with hierarchy, which seeks to really make inroads in clearing away the veils, clouds, miasmas, areas of darkness and distortion in this, what the EK calls major plane of illusion, namely the astral plane. All of these terms like Maya, glamour, illusion, they're all applicable to a number of levels. When we get specific, we apply them in this way: Maya to the etheric plane, glamour to the emotional, and illusion to the mental, but the terms are inclusive in a way. It's Maya, glamour, and illusion. It's the three-headed dog from hell, we might say, in the Capricorn labor of Hercules. We have to recognize what our enemy is, and it's in our distorted thought, our distorted feeling, pursuing that which is not of value, and our chaotic action. And various of the veils on the etheric plane support this idea: the veil of impulsion, breeding chaos, and the veil of distortion, breeding an inability to see in proportion, and the veil of separation, which prevents us from seeing wholeness and presents to our consciousness fragmentation. So we will work together, and we will sound the Om on one of the second ray notes, a G. It's been said that the sun sounds like a bell on the note G. Some of the investigators say that. Behind the scenes we work, and we can be effective, and we have to be effective that way. It was again emphasized to me that according to the power of the triangles, according to their intensity of purpose and the depth of love with which they are formed, so will be effective or not the work of the men and women of goodwill. So what a responsibility it is to work in an occult manner, unseen, unrecognized, okay, but supportive of all the good things that must precipitate in the world. We have to have confidence in our ability to work in that way. Sometimes we look around and we say, well, there's nobody here, I'm alone. But that's just an illusion. The illusion of loneliness can change into the realization of at-one-ment and oneness and divine presence, regardless of who is here in time and space. I don't know for how many of you the Tibetan has walked in the front door one Sunday morning, like Master Kuthumi walked in the door when Alice Bailey was home and all the others had gone to church. And that would be, quite a physical appearance. But apparently Alice Bailey said that, she heard his voice, but he wasn't appearing in the sense of a tangible Mayavarupa or a physical body. And we have to learn how to work behind the scenes, even though our soul companions may seem far away. We support our individual responsibility with all our ability, our power, all our wisdom and knowledge, all our love, and we shoulder the responsibility apparently alone, but really we are all working together, and we're working with a greater host of workers on the inner side. And we ourselves are bridge between the inner and the outer, and we have to have confidence in our ability to bridge in that way. So a few other people have joined us since I welcomed you all, and I can't really look at this list, but welcome to the people who just came in the last few minutes. Alexandra, Barbara, I can't go through the list here. I'm liable to get a little dizzy. Tia, maybe Regina. Okay. Right. Welcome to you. Now, what we've been doing is examining from a high point of view the great states related to intuition. Intuition includes illumination, understanding, and love. And during these last few weeks, we have been discussing, defining these great terms. He has a wonderful descriptions of these here, just in front of me, and this highlighted is another one of the definitions of love. It's just very beautiful. It is that synthetic, inclusive grasp of the life and needs of all beings, life and needs. I've chosen these two words with intent. He says, for the life is related to the being, and the need is related to the insufficiency which must be fulfilled under the compensation of Jupiter. So it is this which is, it is the high prerogative of a divine Son of God to operate. So we operate through love and through the medium of love, and help bring in the divine soul of love of our planetary logos, and the soul of love eventually of our solar logos. It negates all that builds barriers. It's so easy to build barriers, if not in word, then in attitude and thought, so we have to be watchful. It negates all that builds barriers, makes criticism, analysis is a different thing, and produces separation. It sees no distinction, even when it appreciates need, and it produces in the one who loves, as a soul, immediate identification with that which is love. Well, that's the great objective, immediate identification with, not only with the one who loves, but I prefer even to say as the one who is loved, the one as the one who is loved. All right, so the three words, illumination, understanding, love, they sum up the aspects of the intuition, and they're covered by the word universality or a universal oneness. And we recall that we are entering the age of universality. When we think of the qualities of meditation, which begin with Leo, perhaps. We have concentration in Leo, meditation in Virgo, contemplation in Libra, illumination in Scorpio, inspiration in Sagittarius. We have initiation in Capricorn, and we have universalization in Aquarius, and then finally identification in Pisces. Those little watch words are very important because they sum up a whole meditative approach in those signs, starting from the sign of individuality, Leo, and ending where you identify yourself as who you apparently are. You're very centralized, and finally you reach the stage of identification as the object upon which you are focused, no matter what it is. And that takes some practice. No matter what it is, you find your real self in it, and not only in it, but as it. You find that. So we're working on that. All right. So, and then after going through intuition, illumination, understanding, love, DK says, and universalization, universality, is that not something which all aspirants aim to achieve? We are all aspirants, Even if we've taken the 3rd degree, we're an aspirant. It's just a condition of that towards which the factor of desire reaches. And may it reach high, and may it reach the interior states. Is that not something which all aspirants aim to achieve? And is it not something that each of you, as individuals, needs in a peculiar sense? We need these factors, don't we? We need the light. We need to understand deeply through growing identification. We need love. We need the intuition. And when you look at the intuition, of course, it's on the 4th subplane, which we call the intuitional, but that's not immediate. And I've pointed this out before. We reach towards the intuition found on the 4th subplane, but not until the 4th of the 4th is reached does the real capacity for Buddhic intuition come to us, and it's preceded by divine vision, healing, and the comprehension perhaps of the 4 sounds which relate to the 4 higher etheric planes, different ways of looking at these. So this is a composite chart. It's very valuable to see many things put together. Keith Bailey put this together, and it's very helpful in study. So we need this. Where it is present, and this love, this intuition, there is an immediate decentralization of the dramatic I. We see in politics so much exploitation of this very strongly emphasized dramatic I, which is simply an indication that the 5th petal of the egoic lotus is beginning to receive attention, but it certainly hasn't unfolded. Otherwise, one would be a 1st degree initiate. So, there's all of this I-ness that's being emphasized in the field. It's a dangerous field at the moment. And DK says going through the stage of personality has its dangers. It's a very separative stage at first. But where love is present, there's decentralization. The Ds, how they work. And I've pointed this out before. Let's see. Where am I? I want to just put them down because I think it's worth seeing. Discipline. Now, this is not written in stone. Dispassion, discrimination, decentralization, and the general one, detachment. There's always with the D here a standing back from material involvement. There are other Ds that are a little more depressing. I read about them today, but these are the Ds which bring us to liberation. So, we decentralize the dramatic I. and always, which is that tendency or capacity always to relate all happenings, all phenomena, all group work to oneself as the center. Well, that may be okay in the very early days of evolution, but we've outgrown that, definitely. So, as I go along here and discuss this, basically what we're doing is we're reading through the book Glamour World Problem, which were the instructions given to his Dissipation of Glamour group, Observers of Reality, the second seed group, and made into a book. So he says further, so when things come up for you, make a note. You may want to make a comment, make a note, have a question when we stop our academic work for this session. I cannot enlarge further upon the subject of intuition. It is too vast a matter and too abstruse. When you think about it, let's see if I can go over here. Take a look here. This is the cosmic Buddhic plane. And these, the seven rishis are found here of the Great Bear, but also, I think, I don't want to get too much into this, but I think they belong on the cosmic atmic plane, and the seven stars of the Pleiades are the source of cosmic Buddhi. But let's just say, here's intuition too. And then there's a vast supercosmic plane given to intuition alone. So when he says, okay, it's how does he say it? It's a vast matter and very abstruse. We are just coming to the beginning of what intuition may be. Basically, we've been working with the mind and, trying to reason things out, and we've been rather far from the transcendental mind of intuition, which is pure reason, the seeing of how the arrangement really is. We're going to learn that, but intuition is vast when we think of the various cosmic planes. All I can do, he says, is to put before you its three aspects: illumination, understanding, and love. So much of that relates to the sign Pisces in a way, and maybe Gemini, maybe the second ray signs particularly. All I can do is to put before you its three aspects and then urge upon you the need to submit to that training and apply to yourselves that discipline which will work out in your life as love, light, and understanding. He's taking them in whatever order. He began with illumination, which is light, then he went to understanding, and then to love. But these are the three factors. And just evaluate, just for a moment, just evaluate your life. How are you in the expression, really, of love, of light, and of understanding? Where is the deficiency? Are they all equally developed in you? We have largely here, the combination of the second ray and the third ray. The first ray, brings in the factors of the will, but these are preparations for that. The bridge here is understanding, I do believe. Light, in some ways, seems the easiest to develop. It's always been easiest for me. But then, understanding tends towards wisdom and towards love. And eventually love is established. Depending upon our ray, ultimately our monadic ray, so will be the ability to develop these different capacities. When you look at any triangle, we were, this morning we were having the science of triangles. Every couple of weeks we'll do that, although, sometimes we're on the morning schedule there and it may just favor a certain group for the science of triangles. I'll have to talk to Tuija and see what we can do about that, because this is a very important subject coming out of esoteric astrology. That's just a little bit of an aside. But depending on your monadic ray, really, so will be the ease of development of any of the three aspects. Let's just say that for the first ray monad, love is the hardest to develop. For the second ray monad, knowledge is the hardest to develop. And for the third ray monad, which can, cleverly get around anything, then maybe will is the hardest to develop. So they don't necessarily develop, in perfect order and sequence, and none of us is a perfectly balanced being. It has been said of the Christ that he has the perfectly balanced endocrine system, which would fit, if the sign Libra is very strong in his ongoing horoscope, as well as Pisces, of course. That balance would be his. But for us, maybe we can detect, what is it? What is most developed? What is least developed? What are we going to do about it, you see? Okay. When the theory is grasped and the right adjustments are made and when the needed work is done, this is all, telling us what we must do. We can't remain with theoretical work only. I remember a moment in the arcane school back in earlier studies when it basically said, okay, you've had a lot of theory. Now it's time to really do something. So, and when the needed work is done, the personality then becomes magnetic because the soul is infusing. Magnetism comes in on the second ray from one perspective and in on the first ray from yet another perspective. Whilst the brain cells around the pineal gland, which have been hitherto dormant, become awakened and vibrant. And that's the place which is neither dry nor wet, where the feet of the magician must be set. That area right around the pineal gland in the physical and in the etheric brain. So note rule 8. Is that 8? No, wait a second. Here it is. 8 in a treatise on white magic. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what. Let's make this easy to do. ATOMM, a treatise on white magic with an extra M, and that will make it possible to spell that out. A treatise on white magic. Abbreviations can be very useful. Okay. So note rule 8 there about that area around the pineal gland. Matter of fact, I think I'll just go there just very quickly to just show you what it is. A lot of you will remember it, of course, but some maybe not. And let's see, I don't know. Where are we here? Let's see, just at the very beginning of a treatise on white magic. Let's try that. And a treatise on white magic. And here are the rules. And we'll go to number 8. The Agnisurians respond to the sound. The waters ebb and flow. Let the magician guard himself from drowning at the midway point, that is solar plexus, where land and water meet. And then, this is the one I was talking about, the midway spot, which is neither dry nor wet. See, dry would be land and would be the dense physical plane. Wet would be the astral plane, but we're talking about the etheric plane. The midway spot, which is neither dry nor wet, must provide the standing place whereon his feet are set. And then when water, land, and air meet, there is the place for magic to be wrought, and that is right there in that area around the pineal gland. And, some people refer to it as the cave and various ways of thinking about it. But this is something that is being referenced right here. So the brain cells around the pineal gland become awakened and vibrant, and the master can see this. And when that happens, the light in the head begins to shine forth. He does say you can be highly intuitive without ever noticing this phenomenal light, but okay. For some people, the quality of their brain cells is such that the light really begins to shine. The nucleus of every cell in the body is a point of light, akin in a way to the jewel in each one of the chakras, etherically. The nucleus of every cell in the body is a point of light, and when the light of the intuition is sensed, it is this cell light that will immediately respond. Now, at the heart, whoops, I've got to get back to my red brackets. So at the heart of every atom is the presence of Buddhi, we are told, at least in this solar system. The continuance of the inflow of the light of the intuition will draw forth, esoterically speaking, into the light of day. Remember, the light of day is interestingly ruled. Now, well, this is so interesting. Into the light of day, every cell, which is so constituted that it will respond. It has to be developed to a point and has to be awakened to a point. But just think of it. The light of day is the Scorpio type of light. It's Scorpio. Now, what sign is it that rules the plane of intuition? And, obviously I'm heading in the direction of saying, of course, it's Scorpio. But just take a look. So the light of day is scorpionic. Here we are, and here's Scorpio. And this is the plane of intuition on which the hierarchy of human monads are found. So we can put those ideas together and realize that the intuition is invoking, or rather evoking, the light of day. Okay, the continuance of the inflow of the light of the intuition will draw forth, esoterically speaking, into the light of day, every cell which is so constituted that it will respond, and we will have a light demonstration, a halo, a kind of glorification, a transfiguration. We will have an interesting Vulcan is involved, because Vulcan burnishes the shield of Mars. Mars is that sort of dense, heavy, non-sacred condition of matter, but if it gets all shined up through Vulcan, then the light shines forth, and Vulcan is a powerfully fourth ray planet on the monadic level. So all these things fit together. The number 4, the intuitional plane, Scorpio being the major distributor of the fourth ray, the intuitive plane being the fourth. The light will shine when the intuition is evoked. Well, okay, this is a whole new subject, and I don't think that it profits us. See, the whole next section, I was once given some very complex symbols that I think this group was meditating upon, but as fate would have it, during one of the many moves of house that I went through, these symbols disappeared, but fortunately they were saved by another student, and well, I don't know if it's worth bringing them out. They're very complex. It would take us a long time, but we can talk about the approach to symbols. That'll be our next discussion. Because if we can experience spiritual reading, now, where do we begin to do that? I think, right here on the third subplane of the higher mental plane, spiritual discernment, spiritual reading, we begin to see the spiritual factor in all forms and aggregations presented to us. Nothing remains on its own level anymore. If I'm, well, I don't know, this is not too good, but if I'm looking at a pitch pipe here, which gives me the whole range of notes as we normally use them, I might be able to connect that with the 7 major notes of the music of the spheres. I always want to find a a structure on a higher plane to which the lesser object or structure relates. And this will be our work in intuition. So that's where we'll begin next time. I don't see the advantage of plowing ahead into an entirely new subject at this point. So this will be the end of our academic reading portion for Doggy, Dissipation of Glamour Initiative number 64 and page, aren't we making progress? Page 6. And we'll begin next time. Whoop, that's not good. There it is. Thank goodness they allow you to retrieve everything. Beginning of academic reading portion, Doggy 65. And today is the 26th January. We're well into the group sign Aquarius. And let's see, the next time we deal with this will be on the 2nd of February. Unless there's some kind of full moon going on there. I don't think so. By the way, the full moon is coming up on the 31st or so, toward the end of the month, and Tuija and I have presentations that are going to be along those lines, with the pre-full moon webinar and then the exact moment meditation service with music and image. And also I'll be meditating with the solar fire ritual written for Aquarius. So it's music and oratory and meditation. So I invite you to join me in meditation when you receive the invite for that. All right, friends, there we are. And I'm going to ask you if you have any questions on what we have dealt with today. We haven't really gone through a big portion, but we have talked about decentralization. We've talked about the 5 Ds, which lead to the Buddha's great principle, which is detachment, and what's it for anyway. And we've gone through Master DK's exhortation that we really train ourselves, and that we've talked about love, light, and understanding, and we've talked about whether there is a balance of these in our life, and we've talked about the activation of the very center of every atom, of every cell, and how the intuition can draw that forth. And we've talked about the analogy between the jewel, which is found in every chakra, whether it's a major, minor, or minute chakra, and this point of light in every cell. Actually, you know, those jewels, they're activated by the first ray and along the will line. It's the nucleus of everything, you see. We've talked about light, the Buddhic factor at the heart of every cell. And we've talked about the general glorification, which we can undergo as the light within us is evoked. Now, you know, we are living down here with our vehicle in the dark light, but eventually the light of day will dawn, and we will, under the influence of Vulcan, begin to shine and irradiate, and there will be a halo, there will be a glorification, there will be a transfiguration, and we will be light beings, okay? And our whole planet will become a light being, and will fulfill its part as the base of the spine center of the solar logos, helping that great logos take its 5th initiation, maybe in this solar system. So, you know, it's going to be a hot time on this planet, and I don't know whether we'll be here or come back to this planet. It's hard to say, because before so many thousands of years are up, we'll be on the way of higher evolution, and we'll have to see what path we take. We'll probably take the path by which we descended, and it's really too early to tell what that is. Anyway, I've talked long enough, and if you have, yeah, okay, so now we have, yeah, I've got a couple of, yeah. Suzanne, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Oh, ho, ho. Okay, Suzanne, you got a big one here. I just read some material on the electric bridge through some online files via the Arcane School, including the work of Lawrence Newey. Okay, well, he's a very strong fifth ray worker in London on the Antikarana as an electrical phenomenon. I believe it is that. It's also a musical phenomenon. It can be approached in terms of energy from different perspectives. He and others mentioned this area of the brain that you brought up today. It may be of interest for some in the group to research a bit. Oh, yes, indeed. And of course, many thanks to all of you there and Michael. And also, I do hope you will continue to bring up and discuss these symbols you spoke of. Well, I have to see, I have a great, in storage, it feels like my life is in storage. In Arizona, I have a huge storage of all my heavy books and many these other maps and charts and all that kind of thing. And it's a little hard to bring them to Finland, but I'll be looking and we'll see what we might be able to do. But that would be like a whole unit of work. It would really be extremely demanding, and but maybe I can refine them. I'm almost afraid to go in there and find out what's buried, It's like my whole past is buried there. I also have some of the books falling apart from Marion Walter. She chewed those books very well, but they're hardly in a condition that can be read. You try to open them and they start to fall apart, but they are historical items, we might say. Look, the whole factor of the Rainbow Bridge, it is electrical, but it also relates to the different vibratory pitches and to musical resonance. And you know how it is sometimes with a piano, if you take the top off the piano when you hit a low note, then all of the notes that are higher, that are in resonance with that low note, will begin to vibrate even though you haven't touched those notes. So by studying the factor of resonance and making that bridge like a string of a harp, we can, in a musical manner, achieve the connection, the fourth ray, music, connection between the high and the low. And of course, the electrical key to the secret doctrine is very, very important. And DK once said there is an approach to the mysteries which is strictly electrical, and which the normal approaches, through the church and through masonry and even through normal esoteric practices, they cannot touch that. That's a whole different thing. So I'm sure that Lawrence is on to something there, and I don't know what kind of research we can do without the proper equipment, but what we can do is internal, sensed, feeling, introspective research concerning ourselves as the object and the activation of the felt activation of the different parts of the brain and the ethers under certain circumstances. We can do that kind of internal observation. There are some people for whom a whole process is going on inside them, and they feel the movements, they feel the activations, they feel the heat, the intensity, the pain, the release. They are the laboratory, and that is one kind of research that is open to us. Later, when fifth ray occultists get in there, people who are occultists and on the fifth ray, maybe like, Lawrence, the kind of research that will lead to verification in the outer world of the soul, as in France, will take place. Meanwhile, we can support that wherever we find it and do the internally felt observation of activation of the different parts of our system under different circumstances and meditative approaches. Okay, well, so I'll when I get back to Arizona, I'm going to dare to open the door. It'll probably all fall out on me at the same time, but maybe I can find those symbols. They're so complex, it can take you a year or two to just go through them. But he was training his group in the reading of symbols, and we can do a lot with less complex symbols. Just in the beginning, even the sun and the moon. I mean, what do they stand for? What is the lotus? What is the torch? The two great symbols of the coming Aquarian age. What is the triangle? What is the square? What is the pentagon or the pentagram? Inverted or upright? What is the six-pointed star? What about the seven-pointed star? What about the eight-pointed star? You know, we can connect that with Sirius and Mercury and many things. So before jumping into those really complex symbols, we don't want to put the cart before the horse. We can practice with symbols that are a little more under our grasp and control. Okay, well, thank you, Suzanne, for bringing that to our attention. I did see Lawrence speak. He did. We had our Arcane School conference. We had our Seven Ray conference, and he was brought in via Skype, and he had a lot of interesting things to say, and you could really see the fifth ray at work in him. So he's really a good prospect to advance this line of understanding. Right. Okay. So let's see now, Rosewith. I think you already said, yeah. Okay. And I'm grateful to all of you for meditating with us, and we're doing that work. Okay. So now, other thoughts, other questions. And if I fail to see you, Brett will alert me. Just whatever's on your mind, you know, when we're talking about this sort of background to the glamour work, because we're talking about states of liberation. If you're in a state of love, a state of understanding, a state of illumination, if your intuition is working, you're, you know, coming very close to being liberated from the limitations of the fourth kingdom in nature. So he begins with these states of liberation, and then he'll talk about all the obscurations which prevent that liberation. He'll spend the book doing that, and he'll give us the techniques that we have to use to clear the air. The air is the Buddhic plane, of course. We want the effect of the Buddhic plane to occur through love onto the astral plane, through the matter of the astral plane, and we want to get rid of those images, those attractive, elusive, delusive forms which grab us and make us interested and lead us astray. You know, the old idea of the swamp light. I can only think of the German word for it. It's called Irrlicht, or maybe it means false light, or will-o'-the-wisp. That's it, will-o'-the-wisp. It leads you out over the swamp. You think you're really seeing something. It's very interesting, and the next thing you know, you're sinking in the swamp. So we've got to get rid of that false allure, as it is called, you know. All right, so anybody? Question or statement, whatever. And be brave, you know, whatever's on your mind here, because in a way, all of these classes, I call them classes, these webinars, they're all about occultism. If anything within the whole field of occultism needs clarification, almost any opportunity can arise to do that. I mean, you know, we don't have to say, well, if I rigidly stick to the subject, only this is allowed. So if you have questions on occultism in general, I certainly open the door to that, and we can always relate it to our subject, because everything is related to everything else, you know, and reciprocally. Okay, anything? Anything? Gosh, am I going to have to start calling on the staff? That'd be terrible. They'll suddenly go away. All right. Yes, Brett. Yes.
Alexandra.
Okay.
Alexandra has a hand up.
Very good. Okay. Thank you for alerting me. Okay, Alex, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Good. I have a very profound question.
Oh my God. Okay.
When is it going to get better?
Right. Well, the prophecy.
The reason I ask this is because you know, the Thursday meditation, reappearance of the Christ.
Yes.
Gives you a lot of nice things to reflect on. And so I spent quite a bit of time reflecting on that. You know, you're asked to consider the reappearance of the Christ, and you know, when, what, and how. And so I was, and the question came to mind. So we don't know what's going to happen in 2025. It's going to be a reevaluation of the situation, and we know we have to prepare, help prepare the way as best we can. So the question is, can we expect that time to be a time of great upheaval, or a time of increased clarity? Or when's it going to get better?
Maybe both. You know, thus a great and this is externalization. Thus a great and new movement is proceeding, and a tremendously increased interplay and interactions taking place. This will go on until AD 2025. During the years intervening between now and then, very great changes will be seen taking place, and of course we're witness to that. And at the great General Assembly of the Hierarchy, held as usual every century, in 2025, and this is the important part, the date in all probability will be set for the first stage of the externalization of the hierarchy. So that's the sentence. The date in all probability will be set for the first stage of the real, externalization of the hierarchy. The present cycle from now until that date, and this was written in the 40s, is technically called the stage of the forerunner. And, okay, they're passing through a cycle of great activity, everybody. So look, here's the point, from the ray perspective. The sixth ray is not yet out of incarnation in 2025. The sign Pisces is not yet out of effective demonstration until the year 2117. Of course, it's fading, and he basically says by the end of the 21st century, the sixth ray will pretty well have diminished, although the year 2125 is important there, and the influence of Pisces will have diminished, but still 75 years remain in the presence of these recrudescing energies. So I don't expect any kind of ease, really, but I expect a great clarification of the values and an empowering of those who work for the good, and the clarification in the mind of humanity of what is good, what is evil, and where it's leading. So I don't expect, relief, it's 2025 and it's all happened. No, I don't expect that. I expect that by the time we reach the end of the 21st century, according to HPB, occultism will have won the day, meaning the scientific progress will show that the inner world is real, the etheric body is real, all these kind of things. So in our next incarnation, I don't think it's going to be an easy one for any of us. And, if we're really sincere, we'll be coming back right away, and we'll have to face what's called that last explosion of the sixth ray. I don't think that's happened yet. And you say, when's it going to get better? Excuse me while I have a little paroxysm over here. I think that by the time we enter the 22nd century and move towards the transit of Venus across the sun in the year 2117, which is the same time the Aquarian age begins, that we'll begin to enter that period where we begin to see the light, and where the 1,000 years of peace, where Satan will be bound for 1,000 years, will be on the horizon. I think we've got a whole century of struggle ahead of us. And, we might think about that and say, oh my goodness, I want to get out of here. But I think that is the story, that we're building up to a great struggle between the forces of the Christ and these other forces, which are having a recrudescence and an explosion at the end, and will take out of incarnation many, many, many of those upon the sixth ray soul. Now, how that will happen, I don't know. It may be that, there's a switch in the higher worlds would say, no, you don't get to incarnate. Now you got to wait. Maybe it's that way. And maybe in the households of all these six-ray fanatics, seventh-ray souls will be born. And that will be an interesting household. So I can hope for it that way, that the seventh ray gradually replaces the influx of six-ray souls. But as he told us, the sixth ray is much more destructive than the first ray, and much more dangerous because of its narrow vision. So train yourself well, every one of us. Get ready to be tested to the extreme. Do everything we can to apply everything we've ever learned, and hope for the best because it's coming. But gird yourself because this is going to be a battle, and that's. Is that a pessimistic view? I think it's a realistic view, at least from my point of view, and I'm trying to get myself ready for it, and I hope that my friends and colleagues are doing the same.
Goodness.
All right.
Goodness. Thank you so much. I thought that was a silly question, but of course this is a more than perfect answer. Thank you so much. That's why I think the word courage has come to mind so much for this coming year. I was listening to Martin Viewing recently. He was going through the years 1945, 1975, and I was just trying to recall what those meant in the history of the world, and so I was sort of projecting.
And courage, the age of the heart, the maturity of the heart, the wisdom of the heart. We have to, look, let's get everything out of our causal body that we've got there and demonstrate it somehow, each in his own way and in harmony with the group. Nobody's going to be able to tell anyone exactly what to do. This is an internal matter between you and your own soul and between you and the master. But somehow we're going to get through this and get through it in the right way if the disciples rise to the occasion.
Could I just say one more thing? Just what I've discovered personally about courage, just practically, day to day, and then it kind of ripples out. It's for me, it's being at the center. Okay. It's being. That's all I can say.
Well, that is the place where the being is found and the will is found. And so that's right. He says, look, don't live at all these points of extension all over your personality. We've read that, right? Live at the point of tension, and that is found at the center, as you say. Yeah, well, thank you, Alex, for that question, which, when's it going to get better? That's on a lot of people's minds, and we all have our answers to the question. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. Appreciate it. And let's see, I think we have Anne here. Let's see. Tell me if I'm wrong. What petal opens when we pass? Oh, yeah, good. Okay, Brett, we'll keep it. What petal opens when we pass the stage of dramatic eye of the personality? The latter part of the fifth petal, which when completely open signifies that the first initiation has been taken. By that time, you're an aspirant and you already are attempting modes of decentralization. But of course, look, it doesn't happen overnight. So I would say that even the initiate of the third degree can have certain problems in relinquishing all that he or she has accumulated in favor of following the Christ. Take what you have, what you own, sell it and give the proceeds to the poor, and then follow me. That's the tough one. And until that is really gone through, the factor of decentralization will not be complete. But to be an initiate of the first degree with the fifth petal unfolded completely, this is already a step. And by the time the sixth petal is unfolded completely, we can take the second initiation, which is a major blow against selfishness. And selfishness, of course, is all about seeing the self as if it were this limited thing, which is, and wanting to support that. And that's what our work with this glamour is all about. We try to put to the side a narrow, circumscribed point of view, expand our ring past not, overcome selfishness somewhat, at least, at the second degree. And by the time we get to the And meanwhile, the seventh and eighth petals are stirring and opening, but not completely. They don't really open completely until the third degree. 7, 8, and 9 completely at the third degree. And by that time, all major selfishness and the sense of the dramatic eye should have been lost, superseded. And then we begin to identify more and more with the group and with the whole. First the group, then the whole. First the group and then the one. So it is the fifth petal is the turning point. The early part of the fifth petal is really selfish. The middle part really suffers because the king is sick and falls, or the queen. We're sort of the great ego, and it comes crashing down. Humpty Dumpty falls off the wall, and the egg cracks, and then that opens up the possibility of becoming an aspirant and putting other things first. So the fifth petal is decisive. Interestingly enough, it in one sense is ruled by Leo if you start from petal number 1, and in another sense is ruled by Scorpio. Leo and Scorpio go together, and we're told that Scorpio stages the release of Leo, often through a lot of suffering. Okay, so the fifth petal is what we're talking about, and people like ourselves should certainly be at the end of the fifth petal, real aspirants, either closing in on the first degree or having taken it. And we should not be in the egotistical phase of that fifth petal manifestation. Hope that is useful to you. Yeah, that's interesting. And here's another one with Suzanne saying from selfishness to self-isness. And that's good. I've never seen that before. What is the real self? If we can overcome the glamour of being captivated by our, little ring pass knot, maybe we will learn what the self is. And the Buddha would have us do this and rely upon that self. That's what the Buddha said in his last sermon. Rely upon yourself, the real self, the self-isness. I like that. Thank you, Suzanne. Let's see, what
Michael?
else? Yes, Brett. Yes.
Michael has his hand up.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much. And Michael, go ahead.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Michael.
I just wanted to add a little bit to Alex's question or comments. There are a couple of qualities that we should be working on developing to help us through this period of transition.
Okay.
One of those qualities is continuity of consciousness, because it's not working just while in incarnation, it's working between incarnations too, and we want to maintain that continuity of our work.
Indeed. And I have a little technical point on that ties in with what the question by Anne was. So you go ahead and finish, and then I'll add it.
The second quality is divine indifference, and it's not caring, it's caring so much that we focus our energies where it should be focused rather than on the discord.
Okay. Right. It's like the Tibetan comes up with some humorous things. He says along this line, nothing that arises in the astral body makes any difference. He says, they say, what do they say? Let them say. He says a certain don't care attitude is desirable at a certain point. So he tries to help us release our consciousness from all the things we thought were so important and really focus on the essentials. So divine indifference, but then, of course, where are you focused when you can achieve divine indifference? Who are you when you've achieved divine indifference? You're certainly not identified as a personality. You are already decentralized, and you are sufficiently detached. Okay, so
that's where we go.
That's where we go. That's where we go. Now, the first one, just repeat them again. The first one was
continuity of consciousness.
And then divine indifference. Okay, look.
Right.
When you have, this is what I gathered from when I was doing this book on the egoic lotus, that when you've completely opened the sixth petal, it is possible to forego devachan, to preserve your astral body and your mental body, not your etheric, to hang out on the inner planes under that state of preservation, and to work in that way and come back quickly with many of the faculties which you have generated much more accessible. So, in other words, we say, well, I think I'll forego Devachan. Well, we're not just allowed to do that unless we have achieved certain things, because Devachan is a great building and processing, what can I call it, process. It is focused on building faculty, which is useful in the next incarnation. So many people need that, they can't forego it. But by the time we've completely opened the sixth petal, which means the second initiation, we can have that continuity from the previous incarnation. And interestingly enough, we also can be used by a higher source. And by that I mean, if a higher disciple wants to use our vehicle and somehow overshadow or take the vehicle over, the opening of the sixth petal is required to do that. So that's another pivot point when it comes to continuity and rapid return. Now, I suppose all of us will find out once we get on the other side where we're going. But let's just say that Sanat Kumara said to all of his 6th-degree initiates, things are too hot here on earth. I need you now. Register your choice where you're going to go, but stay with me. I need you. And I think it's going to be that way for some of us disciples on a lower turn of the spiral. We have to get back to work quickly and be born where we need to be born, because we're not going to produce a Maya Varupa yet at the stage of the 2nd or 3rd degree, and then get on with the business of continuing the projects that we have been part of in our previous incarnation. Seed group process, 275 years. That's what DK tells us. Anything else, Michael?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Right. Okay. Yes, Alex, thank you. Yes, go ahead. Brett, yes.
Karen has a hand up.
Okay. Karen, right. Okay. And there you go, Karen.
Okay. Thank you very much. Michael, this is for clarification. At the very beginning today, you mentioned that there were 33 people, and then you said that we have 33 vertebrae in our spinal column, and the life of Jesus was 33 years. And at the 30th year, he took the second initiation. And then you made 2 other comments, which I wasn't able to write down. One was about the first resurrection.
First resurrection is after the crucifixion. It's not the real resurrection, but it is the rising into a higher state and showing the conquest of death. The real resurrection is the 7th degree. So, it's a little hard to know who's present there. Is it Christ that is helping Jesus resurrect his internal vehicles? And when that luminous presence tells, is it Mary Magdalene? I can't remember. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. It's just because of the electrical voltage. Is this the Christ doing this, or is this the Master Jesus? And if it's not the Master Jesus, is he standing by and seeing how it's done? So, DK says one day the gold and silver threads of the Jesus and Christ cooperation will be disentangled, and we'll know who is doing what. But right now we can only guess, Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's the resurrection, Now you asked one other thing. The other initiations were taken in 3 years. The 3rd and the 4th, taken within 3 years. Now, I'm not sure about that. I got this from Manly Hall, and I've never, counted the vertebrae myself, but the number 33, he says, is important and has to do, he's quite a Mason, Manly Hall was, and he was a 33rd degree Mason, actually, meaning the degree was conferred upon him due to his honorable representation of the brotherhood. And he talked about that anatomical correspondence to the years. I guess the really important thing is to realize how long it took to move from infancy to the 30th year, which is an analogy to the movement from the first initiation, the birth, to the baptism. Now, for most of us, it takes a long time, but DK, just to prove that all rules are there to be broken, did tell us that it might even be possible to take the second initiation in the next incarnation. And I just dropped my jaw when I saw that, given how much emphasis there had been on that long period of time between the first and second degree. Well, anyway, look, we're on our way, Karen. We're on our way, and the time factor is in our hands to a great degree. So, we're under the gun now. These next 7 years are pretty pressureful, and in answer to the question, when's it going to get better, we have to be a big part of making it get better, and we cannot fail as did the disciples before the Second World War. If there had been enough of them concentrating in the right way, the worst could have been avoided, said the Tibetan, but we can't let that happen regarding World War III, because that will be terminal, and he did write warningly about that in the introduction to the Problems of Humanity, which it was Brett that put that in my way at one point, and I found it, oh my goodness, why isn't this published anymore? Because this is really hot stuff, It talks about the danger. On the other hand, Foster Bailey, who occupies the same place in Master Moria's ashram as Alice Bailey occupied in KH's ashram, said in a 1952 writing, I believe, something there, that the Tibetan assured him that there would be no nuclear war. Who knows? That's a bit later than the Tibetan wrote the warning, and Foster Bailey is a man to be trusted, and that's what he said. The Tibetan gave him the assurance. Was it a false Tibetan? Probably not in his case. There are so many thought forms of the masters running around on the astral plane, and people believe it, and they give good words of mediocre cheer. That's the quote, good words of mediocre cheer. But Foster Bailey probably was in touch with the real thing, and he said, no nuclear war. So let's see. That was in the 50s, 60 years have passed or more. We still have a lot of work to do. DK said we could be set back, but if we were set back, it would probably be for about 300 years, which, okay, it's sad, but, it's not terminal. In writing in the late 40s, he talked about the terminal state of the wiping out of humanity and the starting of the race all over again to see if a race could not be raised, which would actually express the divine principles. Okay, what else? Anything? All right. There are 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, a total of 29 from Atlas. Very good, Michael. Thank you. Well, anyway, maybe Manly Hall with his 33. I don't know how he counted, but 29 is pretty good. We're getting there, and 4 more would be needed. So anyway, I'll have to find that Manly Hall reference and see what he was referring to and how he was counting. Yeah, Brett. Thank you, Michael. Go ahead. Yes, Brett.
Carl has his hand up.
Very good. Thank you. It's so easy for me to get lost talking, Okay, hold on. I'm almost with you, Carl. And there we go. Carl, yep. Go ahead, Carl. You're on. Your microphone is clear, and if your volume is up, you should be able to be heard. So it might be an adjustment on your own computer. And if we don't get you speaking, then you can write it out, whatever you would like to do. Okay, it looks like we're having a little trouble there, but anyway, write something if you wish, or I don't know why it can't be heard right now. Muted by the organizer. I haven't muted anybody. Brett, do you get what's going on here? Carl is muted by an organizer.
I don't know.
I'm not that organizer. Carl is self-muted. Carl is self-muted.
Yeah.
If you can get rid of the self-mute, Carl, or write it out, as a question.
There you go.
There you go. There you go. Can you talk? You're clear now. Okay. Well, anyway, this kind of thing happens now and then, so don't.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. What did you do to make yourself audible?
Something on my microphone itself. I had to hit a button for it to be a solid light.
Oh, that button. All right.
Okay. All right. So I was thinking about what Michael and Alex were saying, and some of the thoughts that came to my mind is that about holding the space with a real sense of assuredness that the good that needs to descend, will happen, and it goes beyond belief. It's that sense of assuredness that you have too of who and what you are as a being. That kind of assuredness,
conviction,
that can aid the can aid the process.
Positivity, the achievement of positivity is the goal of the initiative on the second ray. So obviously, your faith has made you whole. Your faith has healed you. This whole idea of what faith can be and how it actually produces the demonstration of that which is desired. So if for some reason we doubt, like that picture by Rorik of the saint praying, but the little black serpent is biting his heel, that's the serpent of doubt. If we get rid of our doubts in that way and stand in that assuredness of which you're speaking, we're going to facilitate the appearance of the better time. So it's a good point. It's a good point, Carl. Appreciate that. And by the way, Ann Christus has said here that 4 are fused into 1, if I remember correctly. So, okay, maybe this question of the vertebrae can be solved. It would be really neat if there were 33 of them, and having something to do with the rise of the Kundalini and the achievement of some kind of Christhood. Thanks for that. Okay, well, look, friends, thank you, Carol, very much for your contribution. And let's see. Right. Okay, we're good. Now, look, I think, friends, we better get on to our meditation. So that's good work, good questions. Thank you. And like I say, in all of these things, we can relate them back to the main subject. Obviously, if we have a clarified consciousness, if we have lifted the veils and the distortions, if we make our way into the appreciation of the group so we identify as the group, identify as the one, and not just as the isolated individual, we have overcome a major glamour. They're all so interrelated, these glamours, and they usually are based upon mistaken identity, if I can put it that way. And mistaken identity is natural for the up-and-coming consciousness, but there's a point at which it just has to be dropped, and the deeper understanding of who we really are, the unveiling, has to occur. All right. Let's have our meditation. Brett, I hope I haven't, really overlooked anybody here, but I think oh, wait a second. There was one that I did overlook, or at least Yvonne, the next full moon is the second. Second in January. Oh, yes, that's right. Not a blue moon, but it's going to be an Aquarius moon in January, right? Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you. All right, just stay tuned. We'll try to, get our schedule out to you. And as a whole, because Tuija has created a very vast yearly schedule, and then when Joe and Brett add their 2 cents to it, you'll see what we're all doing, and you can tune in, and that'll be coming to you. But meanwhile, also for each event, we'll be notifying you just as a little prod. And the webinars, if you're signed up, for instance, notify you anyway, if you're on the permanent list. All right, so that's that. And we go to our meditation. So we'll begin by invoking the silence and gathering in the presence of these deeper energies which are pervading us all, really. And the silence is very strengthening of our unification and the blending of our many individual consciousnesses into one receptive and projective consciousness. And normally, we would take the 10 minutes in smaller groups, but when you're doing that in your smaller groups, you can follow the meditation out exactly. And we're going to use our protective formula, the divine cross, the forehead, the chest, the left eye, the right eye, and the light that shines, protective light that shines forth from that cross as this work with glamour is dangerous, actually. If we're susceptible, and I don't know any of us that's totally non-susceptible. So we say together, as a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. Let that cross shine individually and for the group as a means of stabilizing ourselves within the light and not succumbing to those forces of the astral plane, which can be very subtle and misleading. Now we blend the three lights. We're used to doing that, gathering up the vital light from the etheric physical and bringing it to the level of mind, where it meets the light of mind. Upon the plane of mind, we focus the two lights, the vital light of matter and the light of mind, the light of reason, however you want to look at that. And it's pretty much on the fourth level of the lower mind where this focusing is taking place. We can imagine that. And to these two blended lights, we seek to add the light of the soul. So we meditate for a few moments on soul contact, contacting soul light. And the light that is found emanating from the solar angel, the angel of the presence, our causal body, the higher mind, imaginatively we see it descend and join the other two lights. Three lights now are blending and merging as one. And with that triple light as one, we say together, followed by the Om 3 times, affirming the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. So our triple light is prepared, and we're going to create from that light our searchlight, both individual and group. So we're going to use this formula, and as we use it, we visualize the arising of the great searchlight, which is at once a method of detection, of bringing to light, and also a weapon for dissipation of the obstructing forces which prevent us from transcending our desire to do all things for the individual little self and not for the group or the one or the whole. So we're going to turn that searchlight on to the astral plane. Visualize that. The group does that. The Ajna Center will be very important here, and we can kind of visualize a group Ajna Center from which, like the horn of the unicorn, the light goes forth. And now the formula, as we visualize that light extending into the glamorous condition of the astral plane. Radiance are we, and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth. The inner world of glamour, inner world of meaning, and the subtle world of glamour. The world of meaning is the world of the soul, and the subtle vehicle, the astral body, is the world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. we reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. And we're going to strengthen our beam with the spiritual will. Imagine it descending from the higher aspects of our nature and into our beam. Spiritual will, the will to good. And imaginatively our beam is strengthened and we say together, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. Now we're going to continue working here with this desire, this very centralized desire to advance the part as if it were ourselves, rather than the group, the whole, the one. We're just so fascinated with the part, and that's what we think about, but those desires don't lead to spiritual release and effectiveness. So before we get into our work using these words of power, think for a few moments, meditate upon all the harm that is done when we have this glamour of being so immersed in the personality, so immersed in the part, that we forget our relations, our right human relations, our group relations, we forget the one. Let's meditate on the damage done, the harm that is done. If people are subject to this glamour, related, of course, to other glamours, separation, egotism, so forth. When we always put ourselves first, put our nation first, we forget the beauty of group life and the larger identity, which occurs when we identify as the group and not just as this separated individual. So, let he who would be the one who would be first among you be your servant, paraphrasing the words of the Christ. The last shall be first. The leader shall serve. The words of power, the power of our united light prevents the glamour of desiring the part and identifying with the part and not with the group and not with the whole. The power of our united light negates the quality of this glamour from affecting humanity. We can't just get caught up in rotary motion, it's the third aspect of divinity, and it creates these isolated rings past not. It's a beginning, but we can't stay there. Break that ring past not, expand it. The power of our united light destroys the life behind this glamour of desiring the part and not the whole. Identifying as the part and not the whole. Whatever holds those rings past not so tight that we can't get beyond them and meet in right human relations the others, that force has to be destroyed. Destroy the binding force. So that the group may emerge and the whole and the one may emerge. So, for 5 minutes of silence, we will have our intensity of purpose and we will work, seeing the work proceed. The dissipation, the scattering of these glamours, the defeat of these errant forces which bind us, we will see that. So, 5 minutes of intense work with our beam, destroying what must be destroyed to give us greater freedom. We have a lot of work to do to open up these rings past not, so that our identity is not bound to the third aspect of divinity. We need to go beyond rotary motion, embrace each other in group formation, and find identification as the group. We have to pull way back from the personality and find that subtle something which can transcend the ordinarily binding ring past knot of egoism and begin to feel our identity pervading the group. And if we can manage it, becoming the one. Very subtle, but certainly moving beyond this desire to fortify that tiny ring past knot and to build up the little self at the expense of the group. We can transcend that. And with the power of our beam and our united light, we can help humanity break out of that binding energy, which holds the identity captive to a much smaller space than it should occupy. And so we withdraw our beam now back to the mental plane. We turn our searchlight off for the moment. It's called the searchlight of the soul. The soul is the dominant energy there, but the two other energies of mind and vitality of matter are there. And we turn that off imaginatively. And we sound the Om 3 times, affirming that work has been done on the astral plane, but it has affected the field of illusion. On the mental plane, it has affected the field of Maya on the etheric physical plane. So, 3 times the Om. And maybe now we move in a clearer space and perhaps have subtly helped others move in a clearer space and out of the distortions which usually bind the life and keep it from developing as it otherwise could. Thank you. Tomorrow we work with the souls of nations. We have our broadcast at 5 p.m. We are reviewing the countries whose souls we have evoked, maybe 10 or 11 or 12 at a time, and reaffirming the evocation of those of the soul nature. And on Sunday, the attracting of money for hierarchical purposes, also at 5 p.m. Okay, thank you everybody for your work. together. And, we'll also be doing our own work with our own glamours, and make sure you follow out the protective formula and so forth when you work on any particular glamour that individually you may have noticed is a difficulty in your subtle nature, working out as it does, of course, on the physical plane in problems. But we have a lot of work to do. Let's work together, and we'll see you tomorrow then for the evocation of the soul of nations. And that's at our comprehensive link, which by now you should have, the Ask Comprehensive link, or the just something new we call the comprehensive link. We'll see you then. A lot of love to you and all the best. And Olivia, Tuija, and I wish you the best and all of us the best in our fight against this world problem we call glamour.